What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show where we break down big, complicated topics and make them easier to understand. Today, we're diving headfirst into something that might seem like a blast from the past, the military draft. Remember that thing? Yeah, it's making headlines again. For years, the draft felt like something out of a history book, but recently it's been creeping back into the national conversation. The rules are changing, and that means big changes for anyone who might be eligible for military service. We're talking about a potential shift from the old system of registering for the draft to a brand new system, automatic registration. That's right, no more filling out forms or remembering deadlines. The government might just sign you up automatically. So how would this whole automatic registration thing even work? Well, imagine this. You turn 18 and boom, you're automatically registered with the Selective Service System, the government agency that handles the draft. They'd use existing databases to identify eligible individuals and add them to the pool of potential draftees. No more forgetting to register or missing deadlines. For starters, how do you make sure they're gathering the right information? We're talking about a massive undertaking and errors are bound to happen. What about people who are exempt from the draft for various reasons? Will the system be smart enough to filter them out? Now you might be thinking, okay, this is all interesting and a little scary, but why should I care? Here's why. This isn't just some abstract policy debate happening in the halls of Congress. This directly affects you, your friends, your siblings, your future kids, basically anyone who might be eligible for the draft one day. We're talking about the possibility of mandatory military service. It's a huge responsibility, and the decision of whether or not to serve should be a personal one. Automatic registration raises a whole bunch of questions about individual rights, government overreach, and the future of our military. In the next few minutes, we're going to unpack all of this and more. We'll dive into the arguments for and against automatic registration, explore the legal and ethical implications, and look at how this issue is playing out across the country. So, buckle up, because things are about to get interesting. All right, let's get down to brass tacks and decipher what's actually in this National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA for short. This behemoth of a bill gets passed every year, and it dictates everything about how the military operates, from funding to weapons systems. This year, tucked away among the thousands of pages, is a section proposing this automatic registration thing. It's like finding a golden ticket in a Wonka bar, except instead of a chocolate factory tour, it's a potential one-way ticket to boot camp. The proposal basically says that the Selective Service System should start using government databases to automatically register eligible individuals for the draft. They're talking about things like social security records, DMV data, maybe even school enrollment info. Big Brother is watching, and now he might just sign you up for military service. Now this isn't a done deal yet. Okay, so let's say this automatic registration thing actually becomes law. How would it actually work in practice? Well, it's all about data, baby. The government would need to create a system that can access and cross-reference information from multiple sources. Think about it. Your social security number, your driver's license data, maybe even your school records. All of this juicy information in one place, just waiting to be tapped into by Uncle Sam. But it raises some serious privacy concerns. What happens if there's a data breach? What about errors in the system? What if you're mistakenly registered when you shouldn't be? So, who are the masterminds behind this whole automatic registration push? Well, one of the biggest proponents is Congresswoman Chrissy Houlahan. She's a former Air Force officer, and she argues that this is about modernizing a system that's stuck in the dark ages. She says it'll make things fairer, ensure everyone does their part, and all that jazz. But of course, not everyone's buying it. On the other side of the ring, you've got folks like Congressman Mike Gallagher, also a military veteran who's calling for a serious national conversation about the draft before we go making any drastic changes. He's worried about the implications for individual liberty and the potential for government overreach. And then you've got advocacy groups on both sides of the issue, lobbying Congress, raising awareness, and generally trying to sway public opinion. Okay, let's talk turkey about the potential train wrecks waiting to happen with this automatic registration thing. First up, eligibility. Even with the fanciest algorithms and supercomputers, figuring out who's actually eligible for the draft is like trying to untangle a headphone cord after a cross-country flight. Messy and frustrating. You've got age requirements, educational deferments, medical exemptions, conscientious objector status, a whole buffet of reasons why someone might not be eligible for military service. And that's before we even get into the whole debate about gender inclusion. Now imagine trying to program all of those nuances and exceptions into a computer system. You're bound to have people who are mistakenly registered when they shouldn't be, and vice versa. Section 2. Immigration and the Draft, a complicated recipe. And speaking of bureaucratic nightmares, let's talk about immigration status. The US has a long and complicated history with immigration, and trying to integrate that into the draft system is like trying to mix oil and water. It just doesn't work. We're talking about green card holders, visa recipients, asylum seekers, a whole spectrum of immigration statuses with different rights and obligations. Should someone who's not a citizen be required to register for the draft? It's a question that's been debated for decades, and there's no easy answer. On one hand, you could argue that anyone who benefits from living in the US should also be prepared to defend it. But on the other hand, is it fair to ask someone who's not yet a full citizen to risk their life for a country that hasn't fully embraced them? Section 3. The ethics algorithm, right or wrong? Which brings us to the heart of the matter, the ethics of automatic registration. Some folks argue that it's a violation of individual liberty. They say that registering for the draft should be a conscious choice, not something that's done to you without your consent. Others counter that it's about shared responsibility. They say that everyone benefits from a strong national defense, so everyone should be prepared to contribute. But here's the thing, even if you believe in the concept of a draft, is automatic registration the right way to go about it? Section 1. The gender question, equality or chaos? All right, folks, buckle up because we're diving into the biggest powder keg of them all, women and the draft. Should women be automatically registered for the draft just like men? It's a question that's been kicking around for decades, and it's gotten even more heated with this whole automatic registration thing. On one side, you've got folks waving the equality flag, saying it's about time women have the same rights and responsibilities as men when it comes to defending the country. On the other side, you've got traditionalists clutching their pearls, claiming it'll weaken the military and undermine traditional gender roles. And with automatic registration looming, it's a conversation we can't afford to ignore. First up, let's hear from the folks who say, "Hell yeah, draft the ladies." Their argument boils down to a few key points. One, it's about equality. In this day and age, women can vote, own property, and even run for president. So why the heck shouldn't they also be required to register for the draft? Two, they argue that a diverse military is a stronger military. Women bring unique skills and perspectives to the table, and having them in the ranks could make our armed forces even more effective. And three, they say it's about sending a message. Requiring women to register for the draft sends a powerful message about gender equality, both at home and on the world stage. Now, the folks who are against drafting women have their own set of arguments. One of their biggest concerns is physicality. They argue that men are generally bigger, stronger, and more suited for the physical demands of combat. They worry that lowering physical standards to accommodate women could weaken the military and put everyone at risk. Another concern is unit cohesion. Some argue that having men and women serving together in close quarters could lead to distractions, drama, and a breakdown in discipline. They worry about romantic relationships, sexual harassment, and the overall impact on morale. And then there's the societal impact. Traditionalists argue that drafting women goes against the natural order of things, that men are protectors and women are nurturers. They worry about the impact on family structures, child-rearing, and traditional gender roles. Hold on to your surfboards, because it's about to catch a wave of controversy. They're setters, right? Well, now the Golden State's taken their plunge into the murky waters of automatic draft registration. It's some serious waves. Remember that NDA and whether or not it'll pass? Well,
California's not waiting around to find out. They've gone ahead and passed their own state law that links drivers for young men with automatic service. That's right. Now, when you go to get your license in California, you might also be signing up for a possible one-way ticket to a boot camp. Order. It's about closing loopholes and making sure part, but critics are calling it government overreach, pure and simple.
Now, California might be leading the charge, but they're not alone in this whole automatic registration experiment. Other states are toying with the idea, and it's sparking a nationwide debate about the balance between national security and individual rights. On one side, you've got folks who say, hey, a little inconvenience is a small price to pay for a strong national defense. They argue that automatic registration just makes sense, that it's efficient, and ensures everyone's doing their part. But on the other side, you've got a growing chorus of voices saying, hold on a minute, this isn't about efficiency, it's about control. They argue that automatic registration is a slippery slope, that it erodes individual liberty and gives the government too much power over our lives. They say it's a fundamental right to choose whether or not to serve in the military, and that the government shouldn't be able to force that decision on anyone. The debate over automatic registration has also reignited a bigger conversation about the draft itself. Some folks are saying, look, if we're really worried about fairness and equality, why even have a draft at all? They argue that we should ditch the whole selective service system and move to a completely voluntary military, just like many other developed countries. They say that a volunteer military is more professional, more motivated, and more in line with American values of individual liberty and freedom of choice. They argue that forcing people to serve against their will is not only morally wrong, but it also creates a less effective military in the long run. Plus, they point out, technology has advanced so much that we might not even need a massive draft army in the future anyway. Drones, cyber warfare, and other high-tech weaponry could change the game entirely. So, is it time to scrap the system and go all volunteer? So there you have it, folks. The American military draft, not just a relic of the past, but a very real issue. We've covered the NDDA, eligibility, gender, and individual rights. This isn't just an abstract policy debate. This is about real people, your friends, your siblings, your future kids. It's about whether the government can compel its citizens to serve. It's about the balance between national security and individual liberty. And it's about the kind of society we want to be. The good news is, this isn't a done deal. The NDAA still has a long way to go before it becomes law. There will be hearings, amendments, and hopefully some serious soul-searching by our elected officials. And that's where you come in. This isn't just a conversation for politicians and policy wonks. This is a conversation that needs to happen in living rooms, coffee shops, and online forums across the country. Talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors. Educate yourselves about the issues. Contact your representatives and let them know where you stand. This is your future we're talking about, so make your voices heard. Because the decisions we make today about the draft will have far-reaching consequences for generations to come. They will shape the relationship between the government and its citizens. They will determine the future of our military, and they will define what it means to be an American in the 21st century. So, what's next? The NDAA is making its way through the legislative labyrinth. It's a long and complicated process. The House and Senate must pass their versions and reconcile them. The automatic registration provision may be amended or removed. Even if it passes, there will likely be legal challenges. Opponents argue it's unconstitutional. This is far from a done deal. The draft conversation isn't going away. In the grand scheme of things, this debate about the draft is about much more than just military service. It's a reflection of our values, our priorities, and our vision for the future. It's about what we're willing to sacrifice for our country and what we expect from our government in return. It's about the balance between individual liberty and the common good. And ultimately, it's about the kind of world we want to leave for future generations. A world where peace is the norm, And military service is a choice, not an obligation. That's it for tonight, folks. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay awesome. We'll see you next time.